Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Home Run Hitters Podcast. It's good to be back after a little bit of a hiatus. I'm Charles McCassian, along with my co-host Andrew Quinn. Andrew, it's good to see you again. How are you?
Chuck, I'm good, man. It's the more important question is how are you? Your voice is back, so it sounds like you're recovering well.
Yes, it's good to be back. Having a little bout of laryngitis is no fun for anyone, I'll tell you that much. So why don't we get right into it with some news and notes? There have been some call-ups lately, some touted prospects from the minor leagues. The Diamondbacks have called up top prospect Alek Thomas today, and he's the 16th best prospect in all of baseball, according to CBS Sports. And he can do a little bit of everything. He's got a unique swing, which helps him generate a bit of power. He had a breakout year last year, hitting .313 with 18 home runs and 29 doubles across AA and AAA. And he's off to a decent start this year, hitting .277, slugging about .500. And it looks like he might just be able to walk right into the center field job in Arizona. Andrew, what do you think?
Well, the Diamondbacks certainly need some young talent to kind of give a jump start to their squad. I did recently watch the Diamondbacks play the other day. They had a series against the Cardinals, and they are a team that kind of lacks star power right now. So bringing up a guy like Alek Thomas, you mentioned it, Chuck. He's been productive the past couple seasons. He was off to a pretty strong start in AAA this year. Not only is he going to provide a little bit of star power for this team, some buzz, some excitement to the people in the greater Phoenix area that come out and watch the Diamondbacks play, but he's going to be a guy that's going to be exciting to watch in the top of their lineup. He gets on base a lot. He's got good speed, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him make some pretty cool plays out in center field too with his defensive prowess out there. So I think the Diamondbacks finally have some excitement to build around. The hope is that he can kind of get off to a good start and doesn't need to bounce back down to AAA, because when we see guys like him come up, we want him to them to be successful and stick around. So wishing the best for him, but yeah, definitely an exciting prospect, no doubt.
Absolutely, and he's not the only one out in Arizona. Corbin Carroll has also been raking in the minors. Before he got hurt, he is unfortunately on the minor league IL right now, but certainly some exciting prospects in Arizona because, frankly, outside of Ketel Marte and maybe a couple of select others, the roster isn't too exciting at the moment, but that's what being in a rebuilding team is like. But
yeah, some good pitching, though. Zach Gallen is exciting to watch. I don't know if you got to see, Chuck, him and Jazz Chisholm were traded for each other a year or two ago, and Jazz Chisholm was pretty vocal about how he wanted to hit a home run off of Gallen, and Gallen struck him out, and in an interview was, basically like, oh yeah, threw him a challenge fastball. He didn't have a chance, said something like that. So good to see from Gallen having that confidence, and he's a fun pitcher to watch. Definitely a great guy in fantasy. But outside of guys like him, yeah, not too many notable names on that Diamondbacks roster, especially really since they traded Paul Goldschmidt to the Cardinals a few years ago. He was kind of the guy out there for a few years. Him and like AJ Pollock really were the only two, notable D-backs in, I don't know, the last 10 years, I would say.
yeah, it had been a long time since the days of Brandon Webb, that's for sure.
Yeah, but hey, add some of these young prospects up there as guys that can break out and hopefully join the ranks.
Absolutely. Moving on to another prospect, Mariners top pitching prospect George Kirby got the call, and he actually pitched today. He went 6 shutout innings, struck out 7, only allowed 4 hits against the Rays as well. And the Rays always seem to put together high quality lineups. So seeing him shut down, Wander Franco, Brandon Lau, and what is typically a pretty powerful lineup is quite impressive. And I mean, we kind of knew what we were getting with George Kirby. He's a little on the older side, 24 years old, but he's been dominating in the minors. He actually got called up straight from AA. Didn't even make a pit stop in AAA. In the 5 starts he had been in this year, he pitched to a 1.82 ERA, winning 2 games and striking out 24 and 2/3 innings. So we certainly know what he can bring to the table. And Mariners officials have taken to calling him Robo Pitcher because he has some of the best control out of any pitcher in all of the minor leagues. And he certainly showed it today, and he's got high velocity, great control. And if he can keep pitching like this, he's going to be a mainstay in that rotation along with Logan Gilbert.
Yeah, definitely exciting news for Mariners fans. And can we go back to Robo Pitcher for a second? Because, Chuck, I just want to bring up how video game-like his minor league statistics have been throughout his career. Like, if you play
By all means.
MLB The Show, which I do, okay, you play Road to the Show. If you have a
I do.
pitcher build or a two-way player build, like your guy's going to dominate on the mound more than likely, especially if you have the difficulty settings on like rookie or something like that. Let's just take a second look at this. This is over his career in the minor league. He's 7-3 with a 2.34 ERA in 29 games. That's 115 innings pitched, 137 strikeouts. So he's averaging over a strikeout per inning. And the most impressive thing to me is his walks and hits per innings pitch, or his whip. It's 1.03. He's averaging just about one base runner per inning, which is partially why his ERA is as low as it was. I mean, like if you do MLB The Show and your pitcher throws like that over the course of a season, he's getting called up to the big leagues. And it's funny. That's exactly what we're seeing with George Kirby. So I think, he had a great start today, like you mentioned, Chuck, kind of his entrance into the league. The guy has pitched so well throughout his time in the minors. Is he going to maybe have a bad start here and there? Sure. Every single pitcher does, whether you're Walker Buehler, Clayton Kershaw, Adam Wainwright, it doesn't matter. Those guys still have bad days every now and then, but I think George Kirby is going to be a guy that is going to really, really do well in the big leagues for years to come. So the Mariners need, some pitching depth if they're going to compete in the AL West, which is still very much a division that's up for grabs, and they're one of the teams in consideration. So I think Kirby's going to be a big add for them.
Absolutely. And the Mariners have, a sneaky good rotation now. You got George Kirby. Logan Gilbert has been pitching like an ace, which is something I love to see. I've been a big Logan Gilbert guy. Been pounding the table for him over the past year, so it's good to see him get going. And Marco Gonzalez and Chris Flexen are certainly no slouches either. The Mariners have been building up what's been a very nice farm system, and seeing some of these guys come up and finally produce is, very exciting. I believe Kyle Lewis has made his return or is making his return soon. Jared Kelenic, he is admittedly still struggling, but I think he's going to find his stride very soon. And you got some vets like Mitch Haniger. The Mariners are an exciting team. Shout out to my man Nick Mello. I don't know if you're watching this or not, but your Mariners, they're playing well, man, and I love to see it.
Well, for guys like Nick, Chuck, you would hope that their farm system's been, churning out some good prospects, considering they haven't made the playoffs in over 20 years. Maybe this is the year they do it, though. I mean, you have young guys that put a spark into the team, into the lineup, especially getting some mentorship from some of the vets that have been around for a while. Is this the year that the Mariners finally make that jump? Who knows? It's still early. They're gonna need some work to do, but there certainly is the youth jump shot that's going to get thrown in there that could make things exciting for them.
Absolutely. And another prospect that's going to get called up, I'm going to talk about him a little later, more in depth. But Twins top prospect Royce Lewis received the call because Carlos Correa, it turns out it's only a bruise to his finger. The initial worry that was going to be a fracture, but nonetheless, Royce Lewis has received the call up, and especially he's helpful because Luis Ariz is on the COVID list, so they needed some help in the infield. And Royce Lewis, he's a speedster. I mean, to put it bluntly, he's got 8 steals in 24 games this year, and he's had multiple seasons in the minors where he's stolen more than 20 bags. And he had an ACL tear last year, so seeing him come back to that was, pretty impressive. And he was considered a top 5 prospect before suffering that bad injury, and getting the call up now is kind of exciting to see. We don't really know what he brings to the table in terms of power because he's still kind of a question mark in that department. But if he can put up a quality average and, get on base and steal some bags, that's going to provide a lot of value for the Twins and for fantasy owners as well.
Yeah, I agree with you, and the speed's exciting. It's something that in the game of baseball, having speed, it not only helps you offensively, puts pressure on the other team, but defensively too. It just gives him that extra range. So, and Arias is a guy who's been kind of in the same boat in terms of being a prospect that's kind of been up and down here and there. So, if he comes in and plays well while Arias is out, there's a chance that he takes his spot altogether. So it's a good opportunity. And, hopefully the speed helps factor in not only on the offensive side, but on the defensive side as well.
Absolutely. It's exciting seeing all these young guys finally getting the chance to come up and, prove their worth in the big leagues. I feel like we haven't really seen this in a long time. I think ever since the call up of Wander Franco, I think it's kind of in a little bit of a new era for baseball. And it's really exciting seeing a lot of these guys get their turn. beginning this year with guys like Spencer Torkelson, and now you're seeing, your Royce Lewis, George Kirby, Alec Thomas getting call-ups, and, before long we're going to see Adley Rutschman. And, it's just exciting to see all these guys finally get their chance. And, not all these guys will necessarily pan out. You're going to have your fair share of Joe Adells who, got all the pedigree in the world, but not able to put it together on the field. But you also have your Wander Francos who live up to their prospect pedigree. So it's going to be interesting to see what guys can pan out and what other ones kind of take a tumble and, don't really reclaim what they could have been. But it's certainly going to be something interesting to keep an eye on as the season progresses.
Yeah, we were talking about it kind of before we got on, Chuck, how it feels like there's been more players, like top prospects, getting called up throughout the course of the first, sixth of the season so far as compared to years past. And yeah, like you said, it will be unfortunate because, not all of these guys are going to break out in a big way. You'd mentioned it with Joe Adell already. Joe Adell was kind of a guy who I was hoping for fantasy purposes was going to be a quality play for me, be a guy I could snag late in keeper leagues and hopefully hang on to for the future, playing with Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani for the next few years. And it just doesn't always work out. It is what it is. It's part of the game. It's baseball. More people fail than succeed in this game. But no, definitely an exciting time to be a baseball fan. And what's cool about it too is it's not just, one or two teams that are calling up some of these top prospects. We're seeing it kind of across the board in baseball as top prospects from all over the place getting called up. You mentioned Adley Rutschman as a guy who you're excited to see. I certainly am too. How about Nolan Gorman with the Cardinals? He's currently, I believe he's got like 12, 13 home runs in the minor leagues right now. He's a guy who has been just kind of lighting it up offensively. They're exciting prospects that are still yet to be called up. So we're not done with it. Continue to keep your eyes peeled because there might be a future stud from your favorite team that's getting called up here soon.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to be something to keep an eye on for sure. Couldn't have put it better myself, Andrew. Moving on to a little bit of injury news. Marcus Stroman was recently placed on IL. He was supposed to start tonight against the Dodgers, but he received a scratch at the last minute without a designation, which would tend to lend belief to the fact that he's probably going to be on the COVID list since they haven't given any indication that there's some type of injury. So that means he's going to be out for, I believe, a couple weeks or at least 10 days. I forget exactly what the rule is, but Hill's going to miss at least one start, maybe two. So if you have Marcus Stroman on your team, just bear that in mind. Put him on your IL so you can pick up another guy to, maybe give you a start or two.
Yeah, the COVID protocols have been interesting because we've seen, at least a couple dozen players within the past week or so go on COVID IL. I know with the Cardinals, Adam Wainwright recently went on it, but he's tested negative the past 2 days. So, Chuck, to go back to your thing, I don't know exactly what the MLB protocols are. They haven't said it yet. And I think part of the reason is because for these professional sports teams, kind of, assuming that we're kind of out of the thick of it, which I would agree that we are. But I don't know if the protocols are going to be, they're certainly going to be less stingy than they were back in 2020 when we were having the COVID shortened season as well. But yeah, for Stroman, the until we get more news about it, we don't know. Like you said, it's probably COVID related or sickness related. But, if there's a chance that he tweaks something, even during his warm up process that prevented him from missing the game, we'll find out more about it. And if it's sickness, health related, he's probably back, not missing another start. Anything physically, though, definitely keep an eye out for because you never really know with pitchers.
For sure. Speaking of pitching, if any of you have Chris Sale stashed on your rosters hoping for a summer comeback, he recently just suffered a setback in his recovery from a fractured rib. Red Sox head honcho Kyle Bloom said that they're going to be looking at bringing back a few weeks later than his original timetable of June. So the Red Sox pitching is taking even more of a hit, especially since one of their better starters to begin the year, Michael Wacha, has been put on the injured list with irritation in his left intercostal, which I have no idea what that is. So I feel like we're just hearing about different injuries, new injuries all the time. But he's going to be on the 10-day IL for that. Tough to see if you're a Red Sox fan.
Yeah.
After last year where they made it all the way to the ALCS, which was, quite a surprise. I mean, is this just, Andrew, is this just, them kind of, regressing to the mean, crashing back down to earth, or what's the deal here?
The old saying, water always finds its level. I wrote about this in one of my preseason preview articles for Sports Time HQ, which shout out to Fernando and all the people over at Sports Time HQ for making the Home Run Hitter show possible for Chuck and myself. Their pitching was well above expectations last year, and you can attribute that to a variety of factors, but bringing back a lot of these same guys, hoping to duplicate lightning in a bottle twice is a tall order. The injuries are unfortunate. We really haven't seen Chris Sale pitch in his prime since the Red Sox last won a World Series. And what was that, 3 seasons ago, I think. So yeah, it's tough to see. It's not the worst thing in the world for Chris Sale. I mean, the dude's made lots and lots and lots of money over the course of his career, even though he has been unfortunately unlucky with injuries. But yeah, for you as a Yankees fan, Chuck, I'm sure that it's not the worst thing in the world to see that the Red Sox pitching woes are as bad as they are. Fernando just comments here. He says that Sale needs to go. I don't know if you're going to be able to get rid of him, Fernando. He's expensive, and I don't think there's a team in baseball that's going to trade for a guy in his early to mid 30s that hasn't pitched in over 3 years in a big league game. So
with that history, that's going to be a tough look. I know Red Sox fans, you guys are looking to sell already, but I don't think Chris Sale is going to be one of those names. Like you said, Andrew, that's a big contract. Not a lot of teams, especially in these days with everyone worried about the salary cap, they're not necessarily willing to make a move for someone like that. Now, if the Red Sox wanted to trade somebody like Xander Bogaerts, who can opt out of his contract and get a new deal, I can absolutely see that, especially with the signing of Trevor Story, who could easily slide over to shortstop. If they want to trade someone like JD Martinez, who's getting up there in age, but is still a productive bat, I can see that as well. But I don't think Chris Sale could be put in that category.
No. I mean, like I said, there's not a team in baseball that is going to go after a guy whose contract is going to be that expensive and potentially not reap any benefit from him. You know what I mean? And to be honest with you, the game has kind of shifted in a way where, Chris Sale not being effective for the past couple of years, there's no guarantee that we ever even see him again at the big leagues. Just because he's healthy doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to be good enough to be a big league pitcher once he is healthy. So the injury setback is sad. I hope the best for Chris Sale, just because when he was in his prime, he was one of, the most electric must-watch pitchers in baseball. But, for Red Sox fans, at least he got you the World Series. You'll always have him getting that last out, I believe, against Manny Machado, throwing just a disgusting front door slider to him to get the last out in the World Series. So at least you'll always have that from Sale, but probably not going to see him contribute at the big league level anytime soon.
Yep. Although if you're a fan, you'll take the World Series, I mean, that's always the end goal. You take that World Series, and whatever happens after that, you live with the consequences. I guess that's the price you pay for an ace like Chris Sale. But moving on, a little bit more of a lighthearted bit of baseball information. Does the name Joe Dunad mean anything to you, Andrew?
Honestly, no. But I'd love for you to tell me a little bit more about this supposedly surprising young player within the Marlins organization. Joe.
Yeah, so he's a prospect in the Marlins organization, but he is the nephew of baseball great Alex Rodriguez.
I can see it. I'm looking at his picture right now. I can definitely see the resemblance. Let me see if I can share my screen here with the good folks at home. Here we go. Yeah, can we see it right there? Can we see the face?
You can see it
in the face. Yeah, absolutely. Right there. Look at that. You can see some A-Rod for sure in that face. There's definitely
he made his MLB debut yesterday, and he hit a home. He homered in his major league debut yesterday. The Marlins win over the Padres. So that just a cool little thing there, It's such an important baseball family, cool. And like that is just always such an impressive thing.
Yeah, and especially for a good feel good story too. This was a guy who, looking at his MLB.com page right now, was a second round pick back in 2017 of the Marlins. So he's been in the minors for over 4 seasons. So it's always good to see kind of an older guy getting called up to the big. I mean, 26 is not old by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly an older prospect finally getting a taste of the big leagues and succeeding right away. So hopefully it's the first of many. I'm sure, being related to A-Rod, that he grew up knowing that steroids are bad and HGH is, illegal and everything like that. But I hope that he hits enough home runs that people start to question where he's getting his supplements from. I really do, just because of the family resemblance. I think that'd be hilarious.
Absolutely.
Fernando commenting here, A-Rod 2.0. Maybe it is.
Wouldn't that be
but,
questionable?
I'm gonna bank on no. He's 26. I think that by the time A-Rod was 26, he probably already had about 200 home runs. So he's got some ways to go to be A-Rod 2.0.
Before we move on to our next segment, I think now's a good time, Fernando, to remind the folks at home that we at the Home Run Hitters podcast are proud to work with Sports Time HQ, and that we are also proud to be sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. And with the baseball season in full swing, in our next episode, Andrew and I are going to give you some of our picks and some of our plays for Underdog Fantasy to give you guys a chance to win some money and just see what happens. If you use code SportsTimeHQ with Underdog Fantasy, they'll match a minimum deposit of $10. They will match it up to $100.
Yeah, jump on there, especially if you're a fantasy football player. They just launched Best Ball Mania 3, which was a hugely successful tournament for them last year. I think that the prize pool is up to like $10 million. So it's like $10 to enter. You use our promo code, deposit $100. You'll get $100 for free. That's 20 tickets to punch for Best Ball Mania to win your share of up to $10 million. So go join Underdog Fantasy, download the app. Definitely a worthwhile thing to do.
Absolutely. And now let's move on to our next segment, who's hot and who's not. Well, it seems certainly that New York and Los Angeles are smoking hot, as the Angels, the Dodgers, the Yankees, and the Mets all lead their respective divisions and have the best records in baseball. The last time we talked, this was not necessarily the case, as the Yankees kind of came out of the gate a little cold. The Angels were the same thing. But the Mets and Dodgers, I feel like, have been pretty consistently good to begin the year. And, I want to start with the Mets, because this is all the more impressive given the fact that the best pitcher in baseball, Jacob deGrom, has been on the shelf this entire time. What are you seeing from the Mets? Who's been carrying them? Because I'll be honest, I don't watch the Mets all the time, but given that they're in the National League, maybe you can offer us a little bit of your insight.
They're the second tier team in New York for you. I get that as a Yankees fan. I can understand that. So, Max Scherzer is definitely the anchor that's bolstering down the Mets pitching staff and pitching rotation right now. He's leading their team in strikeouts. He's leading their team in WHIP, aside from Edwin Diaz, their closer. So he's the anchor. But let me talk to you about some guys who deserve some love aside from Scherzer. One guy that you had mentioned before the season started, Chris Bassett, Chuck. He's been performing really well for the Mets. He has thrown 31 innings and only has a 2.61 ERA, 34 strikeouts to 8 walks. Really just across the board, the Mets pitching staff, aside from Bassett, aside from Scherzer, they've been limiting base runners, which is key for, it's big league baseball, right? There's guys in every lineup that have potential to go yard. You hope that when you're giving up a home run as a pitcher that you do it when there's nobody on base. So the Mets pitchers, by minimizing, the free bases from walks, the free bases from, falling behind 2-0 to a guy, throwing lots of strikes, all of these little things that as a pitcher give you a competitive edge throughout the course of a game and throughout the course of the season, they're executing on all of those things. So Chris Bassett, again, throwing lots of strikes, 34 strikeouts to only 8 walks. Tyler Mcgill, another starter for them. He's 4-1 with the 2.43 ERA, 36 strikeouts to only 8 walks. Scherzer, 42 strikeouts to 9 walks. Carlos Carrasco, who's kind of had a resurgence with the Mets after, having some health problems the past couple of years when he was with Cleveland. He's got 28 strikeouts to 6 walks. Their pitching has definitely been doing what they need to be successful, and the offense has been good. Pete Alonso having a little bit of a resurgence, hitting about 270 with 5 home runs. Jeff McNeil's almost hitting 350 right now, which is just absurd, and he's only struck out 11 times in 89 at-bats. So everybody from the Mets that needs to contribute is contributing right now, but the pitching, I feel like, is doing the majority of the lifting for them, and that's what they need. And like we've talked about multiple times, it's only going to get better for DeGrom, or when DeGrom comes back, I should say. It's only going to get better. We might have a little bit of a delay. Are you there? Oh.
Yeah. It's all right. I think we got a little bit of connection. The Mets are an exciting team. It's good that both New York baseball teams, finally hot at the same time. I feel like we haven't seen, the Mets and the Yankees play really well together since, the Subway Series back in 2000. So, this is a good time for New York baseball. And, I guess it's a good time to talk about the Yankees since last time we talked, the Yankees have been red hot. They had an 11-game winning streak. And honestly, it really all goes into the starting pitching. Nestor Cortez has simply continued where he left off last year. He's pitching to a 1.82 ERA, and he's only allowed 19 hits in 24 2/3 of an inning, striking out 31 batters. Michael King has come out of nowhere to be a mainstay in the bullpen, pitching to a 1.42 ERA with 28 strikeouts in only 19 innings. Clay Holmes only allowed 1 run in 14 innings. Aroldis Chapman has a 0 ERA, which is, with the Aroldis Chapman's previous issues in the past, is something you'd like to see early on. And the Yankees offense has simply been carried by Anthony Rizzo and Aaron Judge, who have both been hitting like MVP candidates. I know you play MLB The Show, Andrew. Anthony Rizzo, he well-deserved April Player of the Month Lightning card. Let's just leave it at that.
Gosh, yeah. The dude's tied for first in baseball with home runs. He's got 9 home runs right now. I'll put it this way, Chuck. I definitely like Rizzo more in Yankees colors and pinstripes than I do seeing him in Chicago Cubs colors. He's a stud, man. He's a stud. He is everything that you want out of a, cornerstone first baseman. He hits for average. He hits for power. He's pesky at the plate. He'll get hit by pitches. He plays great defensively. The Yankees got to steal with him. If we're being honest, they got to steal being able to trade for him and then bring him back. He's so much fun to watch. And Aaron Judge, dude, it's about time. It's about time Aaron Judge puts himself back in consideration for a potential MVP run this year, because we've known that he's been capable of doing it for the last 5-6 years. It's about time. And everybody's staying healthy for the Yankees. There's good things to come for this lineup as long as they just keep doing what they're doing. Absolutely.
And, unexpected contributor, I guess you could say, is Isaiah Kiner Falefa, who I'll be honest, I was kind of down on, because I thought at the time, the Yankees are going to make a run for one of the shortstops available in the market, but obviously things didn't turn out that way. But Kiner Falefa hitting 288, good contact, pesky hitter at the plate, playing gold glove defense. Not too much more you can ask for. And that was one of the big things last year. The Yankees were an awful defensive team, and they got better on defense at shortstop. They got better on defense behind the plate with Jose Trevino, with Kyle Higashioka. And bringing back Anthony Rizzo gives you solid, if not gold glove level, at least very good defensive ability at first base. And the Yankees have been cutting back on the errors. We haven't, as someone who watches the team on a daily basis, you don't see as many stupid mistakes as you did last year, which is something that I really like to see.
Yeah, as a baseball coach, I just want to emphasize what you just said there, Chuck. You want to eliminate stupid mistakes. So it's great that the Yankees, as a big league team, are finally trying to eliminate the stupid mistakes. Speaking of stupid mistakes, let's talk about this real quick. Fernando just threw this in here, Chuck. Hope you don't mind if we take a quick right turn from the Yankees. He says, not sure if you guys talked about this, but how are these Reds? Cardinals losing to those Reds, Andrew. So, Fernando, if you're trying to talk trash about my Cardinals losing to the Reds, can we talk just for a second about the Reds' record overall? Because it's like historically bad at this point. Like, I'm not sure if they're trying to tank because Joey Votto's still playing and he's playing so bad.
They're 3-25.
They're horrendous. They're horrendous. It's an embarrassment to baseball. There are AAA teams. I guarantee you half the teams in AAA would have a better record over 28 games right now than the Cincinnati Reds currently have.
I feel so bad for Joey Votto. He doesn't deserve this.
There was
praying that he gets shipped off to a contender at the trade deadline because that man does not deserve to live out the last of his days.
I don't think he'll leave, though. I think he loves playing for the Reds, even if only 5,000 people are going to come watch him on a Tuesday afternoon. I think he loves it too much.
Just unfortunate. You never want to see a player who puts all that work in having to, die slowly on a really bad team. Really unfortunate.
Yeah. Well, it is what it is. I mean, Reds fans, I'm sorry, but your team's not even nearly good enough to deserve us talking about them any longer. So we'll move on. Hey, let's switch. Let's go to the whole other side of the country. Can we talk about the Dodgers really quickly? Because there's high expectations on this team, Chuck. Obviously, they probably have the best roster on paper in all of baseball between Mookie Betts and Cody Bellinger and Freddie Freeman and Walker Buehler and Clayton Kershaw and on and on and on and on and on. I mean, you can keep rattling off superstars on this team, but they're, I believe, 20-10, sitting atop the NL West. Their biggest competition right now is the Padres, and I think that they're doing good, but I think they should be doing better, and I think that they should be doing a lot better based on the talent that they have. Kind of just looking at anyone on their team that jumps out at you aside from Max Muncy hitting 139 and Justin Turner hitting 176, two of their veteran guys that we were expecting more production from this year, Chuck. Is there anything that kind of stands out to you with the Dodgers struggling so far?
Yeah, it kind of has to do with the fact that Trey Turner is only hitting 255. I mean, I know that's above league average right now, but Trey Turner's, a top 5 shortstop in baseball, or at least he's supposed to be. And he hasn't been playing up to that level early on, showing really none of the pop that he has displayed in the past. Maybe a few too many strikeouts. He's third on the team in strikeouts, only behind Bellinger and Chris Taylor, who are both notoriously high strikeout guys. And it's just, not something you want to see. I mean, we talked about Cody Bellinger. He's shown the pop early on with 4 homers, but he's only hitting 215. I mean, Will Smith's only hitting 238, and, he's supposed to be one of the better hitting catchers in baseball. Edwin Rios has been getting some playing time, only hitting 217. This team is really kind of being carried by Freddie Freeman and I guess Gavin Lux, which is strange to say. Mookie Betts has been average as well. He's bringing the pop, and he scored 26 runs, which actually is a ridiculous amount. So I should give props to Mookie Betts for that. He's scoring. He's getting on base. The average isn't showing it, but Mookie Betts is doing what he can to get on base and be a productive player for the Dodgers. So I should take that back. Mookie Betts has been playing well. So has Freddie Freeman. Freddie Freeman has been the best player in the Dodgers so far. I think that's undisputable. He leads the team in OPS and slugging, as well as on base percentage. He almost has a 400 on base percentage, which is pretty great. But I think the pitching is where the Dodgers have been making most of their money and getting most of their wins, Andrew. I think we can agree on that because the lineup seems to be a little more on the mediocre side to start out the season. Clayton Kershaw, boy, he looks like he hasn't lost a step at all. 4-0, 1.80 ERA, struck out 32 guys in 30 innings. He's still bringing it. And, I mean, the rest of this rotation is pitching like absolute studs. I mean, Walker Buehler, 3-1, 2.08 ERA. Tyler Anderson, of all people, 3-0, 2.78 ERA. Julio Urias picking up where he left off, 1.88 ERA. Tony Gonsolin, 1.64. And even Andrew Heaney, before he went on the IL, pitched 2 games, didn't allow a run in 10 in the third innings. I mean, it's amazing that the Dodgers can take some of these guys who, I mean, I saw Andrew Heaney pitch last year for the Yankees, and he was garbage. But the Dodgers take him and turn him into a high-quality pitcher. It's amazing. The coaches and, the analytics and the system that they got over in L.A., it works wonders.
Yeah, and when you have all of these studs on your offense, guys that are hitting for you, like as a pitcher, if I was pitching for the Dodgers, I'd probably go out there and be like, I can give up like 5 runs today and we're probably still going to win. You know what I mean? Like you just have that confidence too when you get on the mound that like, I got Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman and Will Smith and Justin Turner and Cody Bell. I got a million dudes playing behind me that are going to be able to pick up the slack if I stink. So That probably plays into it. But yeah, I mean, let's take a second to admire Kershaw first right now, because if you bought in on Clayton Kershaw in fantasy drafts, which Chuck and I can we take a second to just gloat, Chuck, because we were preaching from the mountaintops that Clayton Kershaw was a screaming value in redraft and fantasy baseball drafts this year. He's the second best pitcher in fantasy right now, behind Pablo Lopez. Sorry, I got so excited. I aroused my dog. Hey, some bad radio, bad YouTube production. He's got 4 wins. He's got 32 strikeouts. He's got a 1.8 ERA and a WHIP under 3/4. It's at 0.73. So Clayton Kershaw has been having himself an outstanding season so far.
Absolutely. And I'd like to kind of switch over a little bit to the Angels, the other LA team that has been incredibly successful to begin the year. And I want to give a shout out to a guy that, Andrew, I don't think either of us had on our radars, Taylor Ward. I mean, this dude has been on absolute fire. He's hitting .364. He's got 6 homers, 15 RBIs. He's walked 19 times compared to 21 strikeouts. That's an incredible ratio. And he scored 20 runs, which is tied with Ohtani for the team lead. He has been putting them on his back, I mean, alongside Mike Trout. I mean, we all know what Mike Trout can do, so there's really no point in talking about Mike Trout because Mike Trout is an MVP candidate as long as he's healthy. No need to go into that. Shohei Ohtani, MVP candidate when he's healthy. So we know about those two guys. We know what they can bring, but seeing somebody like Taylor Ward, who, is not your typical contributor to the team, it's impressive, and it's something you love to see because for such a long time, it's been painful to see the Angels not play well because they have these great MVP all-star players on their team. And seeing that, the rest of the hitting kind of, catch up basically to the rest of the team is exciting. And
Taylor Ward's definitely a guy that if he keeps contributing the way he does, the Angels are a legit contender to win the AL West outright. No question about it. But let's put it into context just how good he is at getting on base. His on-base percentage right now is .490.
That's
okay. 490. We haven't seen on base percentages that high, honestly, since like Barry Bonds was playing and getting intentionally walked half the time that he
you got to think about that, Andrew. He's getting on base almost exactly half of the time that he comes up to the plate. That's a ridiculous number. And obviously that's going to, eventually average down as the season comes along. But for the 22 games that he's played in, that's incredible.
I saw a hot take the other day, Chuck. You'll probably find this funny that someone posted Taylor Ward as their number 1 player in all of fantasy baseball dynasty, which obviously that's not the case. That's not the case. Taylor Ward is not the number 1 player in dynasty right now, but I mean, shoot, he's certainly a screaming value. If for some reason he's still available on your free agent wire, you have to go pick him up. I would say he's my number 1 ad in every format if he is available on your free agent wire. But is he going to regress? He's definitely going to regress at some point. But in that offense, with the pieces around him, with the hitters around him, with how frequently he's getting on base, he's going to score you a lot of fantasy points. So go get him. And if you can get him at a decent price in a trade, especially because someone else in your league probably just picked him up off the waiver wire, they probably don't value him super high. Go out and get him because, you never know. He could be, the 2 hitter for the Angels for the next 3 seasons and score 110 runs each year.
Hey, stranger things have happened. Moving on to the pitching side, though, Shohei Ohtani does this thing. Not really need to go in depth in that because we know he's a two-way monster. 41 strikeouts in 26 and a third innings. The very gaudy strikeout totals. Hitters are only
Let me just say, Chuck, it's unfair. It's just unfair what he can do as a pitcher and a hitter. It's just unfair.
I was watching the Angels play the Red Sox the other day. Ohtani was on the mound. He struck out Trevor Story 4 times. And, we all know Trevor Story's a great hitter. Fernando, I know that's your boy. But Shohei Ohtani made him look silly in each of those at-bats. Blow by him with fastballs, using his splitter to great effect, had him swinging way out of his league for off-speed out of the zone. He brings it all to the table, and it's unfair. But I want to give a shout-out to a couple other pitchers. Patrick Sandoval has been really good to start the year as well. ERA barely over 2. Noah Syndergaard in the 4 starts that he's made, he's been pretty good. The strikeout numbers aren't quite there yet, but he's pitching to softer contact, and he's keeping his team in the game. I'm just glad to see Noah Syndergaard back out on the mound, honestly, because he's been so hurt over these past few years. And Raisel Iglesias and Aaron Loop are carrying that bullpen. We said it. I've said it for a long time. I know you've heard me say it before too, Andrew. The Angels needed to get pitching. And right now they are getting enough pitching to get by and win games. And, combine that with the hitting production that we've seen, and you have a winning baseball team.
Yeah, I think that they're a team, too, that would really benefit as the season goes on from adding one more high-quality arm, whether that's in the rotation or out of the bullpen, too. So we'll see if the front office agrees and sees it that way, because that has been their Achilles heel the past 10 seasons or so, is not having the pitching to sustain long-term successful runs. But offensively, they're there. And the pitching has been good enough, and that's all you need is for it to be good enough. Is it going to be good enough for 162? I don't know, but it's been good enough so far. And like you said, that's been a huge factor in their success.
Absolutely. Now, we talked about the teams that are hot. I think it's important that we touch upon the teams that have been ice cold. And Fernando, you're going to hate me. I know you're going to hate me for this, but I don't like beating a dead horse. But the Red Sox have simply been horrible. I don't understand, what happened. Rafael Devers has been hitting well. Xander Bogaerts has been hitting 343. That's great. JD Martinez, but the rest of the team has been horrendous. Alex Verdugo is only hitting 212. Kiki Hernandez 176, and Kiki Hernandez was a breakout player last year. Trevor Story. I mean, my God, I don't even know what to say about Trevor Story.
He's been atrocious. I blame Fernando for convincing me to draft him in a couple places in the redraft, and now my redraft lineups are just suffering.
I said not to draft Trevor Story, but no, we gotta have him in the third round. Gotta have him in the third round.
Gotta have him in the third round in Dynasty, no less.
Yes. This bitch is hitting 194. He's hitting 194. He doesn't have a home run. He struck out 35 times in 93 at-bats. That's almost 40% of the time. That's a horrendous strikeout rate. I'm sorry, but that's bad.
I'll attribute it to two things, and none of them are Coors Field related. Okay, number one, every at-bat for him now has a price attached to it because of the contract that he signed, and that new team, new city, new fans that I have to please. The pressure is weighing on Trevor Story right now. He needs to just simplify. I feel like he's going up there trying to do too much. He's trying to be the man that they paid for. You know what I mean? Like, imagine like Mike Trout, he knew, okay, yeah, I'm probably worth $40 million a year, right? But Trevor Story was like, oh, someone wants to pay me this much money to come out here and play. Like, yeah, I'll take that. And I'm not saying he might not feel that he's worth that much money, but there certainly is an added like psychological pressure that gets put on those players when they, become the guy. Story was the guy in Colorado, but he was there, under arbitration for 3 years. So it's not like he was getting a huge payday. Now that he is, I'm sure that there's some added pressure. And the Boston fans, they're passionate, no doubt, but I'm sure they're not being nice to him because they're expecting big things too. So I'm sure he's got some fans to please out there as well. There's probably a lot of things going on to his head and his lack of production so far.
And then the Red Sox thought it was a great idea to trade Hunter Renfroe away for Jackie Bradley Jr. And Jackie Bradley Jr., shocker, is barely hitting above the Mendoza line at 202. And I don't care what you do on defense. You can't be a black hole in the lineup, considering there's already a bunch of other black holes with the way Hernandez and Dahlback and Story. That's like 4 or 5 guys right there. And, you can only have a few other guys carry your lineup for so long if you don't get some type of production out of the rest of them.
That AL East, it's a division that's so competitive, though, So the Orioles weren't bound to be the only team that was going to struggle this year. There had to be another team in that division that was going to struggle. We know at this point, we know it's not going to be the Yankees. We know it's not going to be the Blue Jays. We know it's not going to be the Rays. So the Red Sox were just the next domino to fall.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, Andrew. Put it this way: if you had told me that the Red Sox are going to be in last place today, I would have told you that you were joking, and I would have, I don't know. It's something you don't fathom. Considering, everyone just kind of like, oh, the AL East is going to be competitive. All four teams are going to battle for one division spot and 3 wild cards, and everyone dismisses the Orioles just being in the basement. We knew the Orioles were going to be bad. That's not being disputed. But the fact that the Red Sox have been abysmal is shocking to me. I like a Yankees-Red Sox rivalry. A rivalry is not as fun when one team is bad. Like those Yankees teams back in 2013, 2014, 2016, those were bad teams. I'm sure Red Sox fans hated playing against them because the rivalry wasn't the same. And that's kind of how I feel right now, in the past few seasons when the Red Sox haven't been living up to par, is that it's not as fun if your rival isn't on the same level as you. It adds to the competition, it adds to the fire. More to play for. It's way more exciting.
No, I can see where you're coming from. As a Cardinals fan, the Cards-Cubs rivalry is up there as well, in my opinion, with Red Sox-Yankees. And yeah, I wouldn't say that it's worse when one team is bad, though. I do think that, like, in a rivalry game, you just want to win. Even like for me, even if the Cubs are terrible, I still want to beat them. And if the terrible Cubs beat a good Cardinals team, it's gonna hurt even more than if the two teams are competitive. But yeah, for you, I can see where it's frustrating because you don't want to be talking smack to a bunch of Red Sox fans that, they're not going to be able to even say anything back because the team's just so bad. You want them to probably be talking some smack back to you too. So
the shirt back. That's kind of the way it goes. That's the whole name of the game.
Yeah. All right. Well, Chuck, we had one more big thing that we wanted to do for the good people today before we jump off here, and I figured it'd be as good of a time as ever to get to it. We wanted to come at you guys with some buys and sells for fantasy baseball throughout the first 20% or so of the baseball season happening so far. And then also hit you guys with some of our top waiver ads for the weeks ahead that are probably guys that are currently available on your waiver wires if you're playing in redraft fantasy leagues or even in dynasty fantasy baseball leagues. So I'm going to hit you guys with a couple of, first of all, a couple of players who I think are great sell candidates right now due to their performance, and just personally, I don't see the performance as being as sustainable as it has been up to this point. So guys that you can sell kind of at their peak, especially in redraft, and add some other players to really help bolster up your squads. The first one might be a little bit of a surprise because he's arguably the top pitcher in baseball right now, statistically speaking, and that's Pablo Lopez for the Marlins. So Pablo Lopez, he's thrown 36 innings so far this year. He's got 35 strikeouts in 36 innings. So he's averaging about a strikeout an inning. His ERA is exactly 1, and his WHIP is 0.89. He's got 4 wins on the mound, and he's pitching with the Marlins. Pablo Lopez is a great pitcher. He's a pitch-to-contact pitcher, which I think is important when looking at his strikeout numbers in context. I think that he's actually overperforming in the strikeout category right now because he is a guy who does pitch to a lot of contact. And the thing with these types of pitchers is when they're hot and their WHIP is low and their ERA is low, typically that doesn't stay that way. You see it like almost every year. There's almost always one starting pitcher every year that just gets off to an insane start at the beginning of the season and ends up, being an all-star because they're 12-1. And then in the second half, everything, kind of hits the fan for them and it regresses back towards the mean. And I see a lot of that with Pablo Lopez this year. I think that right now, he's the 21st ranked player overall in Yahoo Fantasy Baseball. He is the number 1 pitcher in fantasy baseball right now. I think he's a guy that if you have him and you're in a league with like savvy dudes, like guys that are picking players up almost every day that are probably familiar with what Pablo Lopez is doing, I think you can get a great haul for him. I would be going after a guy like Walker Buehler, who has been underperforming compared to where everyone thought he was going to be. He's not even in the top 25 of fantasy baseball pitchers right now. You could probably get a Walker Buehler straight up for a Pablo Lopez in fantasy trades right now in redraft. So I'd be taking that trade all day long. Chuck, what do you think about that?
I mean, if you can get a guy like Walker Buehler, I mean, that's pretty good. I obviously don't think Pablo Lopez is going to remain the number one starter in fantasy throughout the course of the year, but I do think he's going to be at least top 20. I'm a big Pablo Lopez guy. I have him in several of my leagues. The Mariners always just seem to churn out quality pitching. We've seen it with Sandy Alcantara. We see it with Pablo Lopez, and we've seen it with guys in the past. He brings a lot to the table. It's just a matter of, kind of bringing the strikeout numbers up a little bit because he does, as you said, pitch to contact a lot more, gets a lot of soft outs. But he can strike out guys. You can get 5 to 7 Ks a game, combine that with some length. I mean, just yesterday he pitched 8 innings, struck out 7 guys, I believe, in a shutout against the Padres. That's quality right there. And I mean, that's a guy I'd like to have on my team. I don't think I'm necessarily going to sell unless, like you said, I'm going to get a guy like Walker Buehler because that's incredible. But otherwise, if I'm not getting maximum value, I'm not going to move him.
Well, Pablo is my top sell right now, but I think the moral for selling players goes as if you have a guy who's performing above what your expectations were for them, they're a guy you should consider selling at peak value. For example, CJ Crone is a guy who I've been talking about for like 2.5, 3 weeks about selling. He's a top 10 fantasy baseball player right now. He's on the trade block in every league that I own him because he's not going to be a top 10 player for the rest of the season. I will bet money on that if I could, but there's not really like a sports book that takes those odds, unfortunately. So it doesn't do me any good. Maybe Underdog will take that up one day, but it's yet to be done. But, guys like that, Manny Machado is the top third baseman in all of fantasy baseball right now. He's a guy that I would be looking to sell just because you never know what you're going to get back in trades. Chuck, let me get you my top buy right now, and then I'm going to hand it over to you to give me one of your first couple waiver wire ads while I jump off here for a second. But Zach Gallen is my top buy right now for a pitcher. He only has 1 win on the year, which might be kind of turning some people off from a fantasy perspective because he's 1-3, but he has a 1.27 ERA and a 19-4 strikeout to walk ratio. He's a screaming buy even on a Diamondbacks team that's struggling a little bit to score runs. I think he's someone that you should go after everywhere you can. You can get him at a good value. So, Chuck, why don't you hit me with a couple guys that you're looking to add off the waiver wires here while I jump off? I'll be back here in a minute.
Sure thing, Andrew. All right, guys. So a guy that I'm actually looking to pick up is a guy on Andrew's Cardinals, Juan Gopez, corner infielder. He kind of, under the radar a little bit because we've seen a lot of other high-profile prospects get called up. We saw it with George Kirby. We've seen it with Royce Lewis, seen some other guys. But Juan Gopez has been a quality hitter. He's never been a top prospect in the Cardinals system, but between AA and AAA last year, he hit 27 home runs, which is a prodigious display of power. And he finally got the call up this year because he hit 9 home runs in his first 22 games in AAA, which is, the ridiculous home run per 9 innings. Only 24 years old and, putting together some power in his first few games. He's already got 3 extra base hits in his first 3 major league games. That's pretty high quality production right there. And, that's something I'm willing to take a chance on. And he's only rostered in 11% of leagues. I mean, that's easily something that you should be taking advantage of without question. And moving on to another guy who I would absolutely love to get my hands on is Alex Cobb on the San Francisco Giants. Solid ERA for his career. He's been a bit of a rough start on paper this year, but his expected ERA is way lower than his actual ERA, which would suggest that he's been pitching into a little bit of bad luck, maybe just some soft contacts and been finding some holes, and there just happened to be a man on base for that. But he's generating more swings and misses, and he's got more velocity on his split finger fastball and his sinker, which is a great sign because you can get those pitches going, you can get anybody out. So that's a guy that I would love to get on my team. And Andrew, you might have missed it, but earlier I was talking about getting one of your guys, actually, Juan Gopez, who recently got the call up and has been, producing 27 home runs in the minors last year. And I mean, that's just an incredible display of power.
Yeah, Yepes is he's been really fun to watch the past couple of days, making his debut a few days ago and getting 2 hits in his debut. he is he's just a hitting machine, man. Like, he just puts the bat on the ball. He's not going to like wow you with anything else that he does from a like defensive or base running standpoint. He's not super fast, and he's not like an excellent defender or anything, but yeah, he's really exciting to watch hit. And with the new expanded DH roles, he could be a guy that if he continues to just do what he's been doing the past week or so, he could be a guy that sticks around in the big leagues for a little while. So worth an ad in all formats, definitely in Dynasty, but he's been in the lineup, pretty consistently for the Cardinals the last week, and he's been performing well. So let me hit you with a couple of my favorite ads, if you don't mind, Chuck. My first one, I'm going to give you two pitchers and two position players. The first pitcher I just want to kind of brag on because we teased it pre-show a little bit, Chuck, but I was recommending that we stash this guy about a month ago as a bullpen arm, and he has just been astounding so far this season, and that is Ryan Helsley, relief pitcher with the St. Louis Cardinals. Ryan Helsley right now, he has a .10 whip. I'll say it again, a .10 whip. That means that he is only averaging one walk or hit every 10 innings that he pitches. That is insane out of the bullpen, and he's owned in under 50% of fantasy leagues on Yahoo. Looking at his stats right now, this is a guy who's been in the big leagues. He's been a bullpen arm for the Cardinals for the last 3 years. He's never been like a hugely successful bullpen arm, but this seems to be the year that he's figuring things out. He's appeared so far in 8 games. He's thrown 10 innings, 20 strikeouts in those 10 innings. He has a fastball that's upwards of 100 miles an hour. It got up to 103 the other day. Hitters are hitting 0.32 against him. So he's allowed 1 hit in 10 innings, no walks, 1 base runner. That's it. Is it going to regress? Certainly. But in save or hold situations, if you're in a league for saves and for holds, Ryan Helsley is a must add. He's a must start every single day because he's got the potential to pitch. And he's arguably been one of the top relief pitchers in all of baseball so far this season.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like he's been a quality producer for your team. And, every team wants that shutdown reliever, and it certainly sounds like Helsley has been that so far. Before we say goodbye, why don't you give us a couple position players who you're trying to pick up for your team?
Absolutely. So I'm going to go with a couple more, couple deeper guys here, guys that maybe aren't owned in as many leagues, but are getting some consistent opportunities and doing well with it. The first one is Ben Gamel. He's an outfielder in the Pittsburgh Pirates organization. He's actually been pretty consistently batting leadoff for them so far this season, so he gets a ton of at-bats, and he's hitting .308, which is pretty respectable at the big league level. Gamel is a guy who's been around for a while. We've seen him with the Yankees, with the Mariners, with the Brewers, even with Cleveland for a couple of years, and he's kind of walked into pretty consistent playing time in Pittsburgh with the Pirates. They aren't an exciting team, but if you need a consistent hitter towards the top of a lineup that's going to get on base, that's going to have run scoring potential, Ben Gamel, he's not going to give you a lot of zeros. If he bats 5 times in a game, he's bound to go 1 for 5 or 2 for 5. So he's a good ad off of the waiver wire, especially for guys that are looking for some consistent players. And then the other one, maybe not as much of a leap to add, but Rowdy Teles with the Milwaukee Brewers. He had himself a week. He had like 14 RBIs this week, including an 8 RBI performance, I believe, on Wednesday. Rowdy Teles is a guy who, we've talked about it before, Chuck. The Brewers are a team that has everything, it seems like, to be a contender for, an NL pennant besides the offensive firepower. And Rowdy Teles is seeming to provide that of late. So he's a guy that if he's available, he's probably first base and utility eligible for you. Go ahead and pick him up, and if you need some help in a spot from here to there, you can throw him in because he's been being shown that he can drive some runs in.
Yeah, I mean, what a mistake of a trade by the Blue Jays. I mean, they gave away a guy who's certainly been producing ever since he got to Milwaukee because he displayed some pop and he showed what he could do last year, but he's just taking it to another level this year. So great ads, Andrew. I think that's actually a great place to sort of conclude our show. Just another reminder that we here are at the Home Run Hitters podcast. We're sponsored by Sports Time HQ and Underdog Fantasy. For every deposit of at least $10, Underdog will match it up to $100. You can find me at FF_ChuckV, and you can find Andrew at AQuinnFF. We put out all our content on there. We promote our show, any articles we may be writing for Sports Time HQ or any other site, so you know where to find us. And we'll be back here next week with some exciting content.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Chuck, I will see you next Sunday. Take it easy, man.
Yeah, you too.
All right. See you guys.